One of the things I think a lot of clinicians and even individuals who are struggling with addiction have a hard time grasping is just because someone stops a certain behavior, how do I know if this person has changed? I often hear this from betrayed partners, and I hear this from the clients that I work with who are typically the addicts. They're desperate to showcase that they've changed. They're desperate to fix the problems that are in front of them. When in reality, what they're really showcasing is how their addict is adapting to recovery. So this is kind of a gray area in the recovery world, in that a lot of people come into recovery work trying to stop certain behaviors, whether that be drug use, compulsive sexual behaviors, gambling, pornography use, sex outside of the marriage, or committed relationships. And they think that, well, I stopped, therefore I'm okay. But what becomes really clear early on in recovery is that the behaviors are really the easiest thing to stop. That's the easiest part of this whole process. It's the actual changing, becoming a new person, or coming into that wiser part of self, a more authentic, honest, transparent version of oneself, because everything up until that point has been curated around these addictive behaviors and protecting those secrets. And so what can happen is actually the addict, absent of those behaviors, can adapt. It can adapt to the recovery environment. It can do this in a lot of different ways, and I'm not saying this to try to project this onto every individual who's in recovery, but for individuals in recovery, couples in recovery, and even clinicians, it becomes your responsibility to really attune to who is sitting across from me in the therapy room. And as the addict, it's your responsibility to become increasingly aware of the ways in which your addict shows up, especially in relationships. How do you try to covertly or overtly get your needs met in illegitimate ways? One of the ways I see this most often is addicts are desperate to be validated for their efforts in recovery. Again, validation on the surface is not a bad thing. It's not an unhealthy thing. However, if you're trying to get it in ways that are either covert or manipulating your partner, let's say, to validate your effort, and that requires them to deny their own lived experience, we would call that illegitimate, right? So if I'm in recovery and I come home and my partner's upset, I didn't follow through on a commitment. Maybe I said that I was going to let you know when I was leaving a certain place and I forgot. And you come home and your partner meets you at the door and says, "Did you forget something?" And immediately your body is going into that fight or flight mode, and you're shocked, you're confused. In your mind, you've done everything. You're going to group, you're going to therapy, you're going to 12-step meetings, you have a really solid recovery plan, you have a 3-circle plan, you've been honest, and maybe you've actually been sober. And in that moment, you have no idea what you've done wrong, and you panic. And maybe you're earnest in the fact that you don't know what you did, and your partner then tells you, "You didn't tell me when you were coming home." And in your mind, instead of attuning to your partner's frustration and understanding that any lack of follow through on the things that you've committed is a significant trigger for them, you begin to list out all of the ways in which you have been doing things right. So now it becomes a game that you're playing, and your partner doesn't know they're playing a game. But what in reality you're actually doing is invalidating their lived experience by trying to prop yourself up and saying, "Look, I've been doing all of these things right. I have been doing all of these things in my recovery. I've been going to group. I've been going to therapy. I've been honest. Heck, I've been sober. There's nothing that I can do that's ever going to please you. I'm always going to be falling short." And so then you start to see that weaponization of shame and trying to project onto your partner what they're really telling you is you're not enough, when in reality what they're talking about for themselves is, "I'm scared. These types of things are really important to me, and you didn't follow through. It's not that you can't be perfect. It's that, like, I'm hurting right now, and I need you to see that I'm hurting, and I need you to recognize that what you've done, even though it may not be the sexual acting out behaviors that have been really harmful, like, this is still really harmful because it feels familiar to those old things, those old behaviors. And because I'm not totally trusting of you, I need you to sit with this." And addicts have a really hard time doing this because they get into recovery and they want to show that they've changed rather than do the work to change. This is typically not a conscious choice they make. It's just the addict adapting to the recovery environment. That addict does not want to die. That addict part of self, it does not want to go away. It's like a virus. It wants to find a host, and it wants to find as many hosts as possible because it wants to survive. It doesn't want to be killed off. And so really the addict's work becomes identifying the ways in which that part shows up, not just in the sexual acting out behaviors, but in how it engages, how it attaches to all of the individuals that it's in relationship with. And I think this is the work that can become really tiresome and really frustrating because they have to recognize at some point recovery has been performative. Maybe that's why they got into it, is they wanted to save their relationship. And in order to save their relationship, they're performing what it means to be authentic. They're performing what it means to be vulnerable. And I'll be honest with you, I don't have a huge problem with that to start, because simply being, they don't have the tools in their tool belt to be able to show up authentically. They're really learning this new skill, and these performative behaviors are really adaptive. And so the work then becomes to increase that awareness and own all of these icky and ugly ways in which the individual is showing up. And so we'll go back to this scenario with the potential partner who's frustrated because their husband or their partner didn't follow through on a commitment. This is a really big deal. And so for the addict to be able to slow down in that moment, breathe through that discomfort, to breathe through the disapproval that they're experiencing from their partner and say, "You're right, I messed up. And I see that that's a really big deal to you. What's it like for you when I don't follow through on my commitment?" And so what that question does is you're now leaning into the discomfort, you're leaning into the disapproval, you're almost inviting it so that you can learn not just about what your partner is experiencing, but you're also learning, how can I gain some tolerance for this level of discomfort that I'm feeling right now? Because this person in front of me is expressing that I've hurt them. And now it's my responsibility to bring integrity, to bring morality back into the relationship, because I robbed it of that. And I need to attune to them right now. This isn't about me. They're not talking about me right now. They're actually expressing how they feel and how I've hurt them. And it is my duty and responsibility to understand the hurt that I've caused so that I can change and so that I can integrate recovery into how I live, not just perform it.